Alrighty. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight. My name is Noah.
And I'm Ryan.
And we are going to be discussing the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and really taking a look at the question, is Bitcoin going mainstream? And also taking a look at Tesla's influence on the future of Bitcoin. So a little bit of background here. Bitcoin was founded in 2008 by Satoshi Nakamoto, and it is a cryptocurrency in which new units, or coins as they're called, are generated by the computational solution of mathematical problems. And these mathematical problems live in a sequence, in a continuous sequence known as the blockchain. And blockchain technology using the cryptographic hash of a previous equation and using the answer of that equation to solve the next block is pretty common in blockchain, and it can be used for a variety of different uses in modern society. Global transactions of Bitcoin operate independently of a central bank and are recorded in an online digital ledger. And it's worth noting, Bitcoin, it can be traded continuously, so 24 hours a day on the open market under the symbol BTC on the New York Stock Exchange. And it can also be traded through personal transactions using an online wallet or an online ledger website known such as Coinbase. And essentially, the benefit of these interactions and transactions is it's known as a smart contract. So it doesn't require a central bank to maintain an element of trust between the buyer and the seller. And the global supply of Bitcoin is capped at 21 million Bitcoins. And it's kind of goes without saying that the inherent value of Bitcoin will continue to rise as we approach that global supply cap.
Who runs the digital ledger? Is that just...
There's no regulation on it. It's just like basically just self-ran.
Okay. It's self-regulated by the equations. So it's all within the mining, if you will. Every equation that's solved and every transaction or every new coin that's created, it's self-regulating simply based on the math, which is why it's so appealing, because it doesn't require much oversight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if Noah tried to transfer me a Bitcoin, like my hash could instantly tell if Noah has Bitcoin or not based off his previous transactions.
Okay.
So it basically just self-regulates itself that way.
Yeah. So a little bit on the recent hype and why Bitcoin has been hyped up lately. It's been receiving pretty significant media attention due to extreme share price volatility. And some of that volatility has come from large publicly traded companies that have begun to invest in Bitcoin, which has led to many questions about the increasing acceptance of cryptocurrency as a whole and as a means of payment for day-to-day transactions. And the most notable of these public companies is Tesla Motors, who announced the purchase of $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin back on February 8th of this year.
Did they actually buy the Bitcoin, spend that kind of money and buy them?
Yes, they took 1.5 billion in cash and purchased Bitcoin and are holding Bitcoin as an asset, which kind of I'll discuss their rationale here in a couple slides. But it's also worth noting here before we switch over, the emerging acceptance of Bitcoin does go hand in hand with the globalization and digitization mega themes that we've discussed in FSA so far. As things are shifting online and becoming more digital focused, Bitcoin that doesn't need any central bank regulation or government interaction is becoming increasingly popular.
Question now for the accounting people here. I know you're not accounting, Noah. That's why
Ryan on the chopping block.
I'm going to move it over to Ryan, Katrina. Adele, are you accounting?
Yeah, I'm accounting.
Oh, good. And Brian, oh, good. We got 4 accounts. Now, if they put that on their balance sheet, it would be an investment. Do they need to mark that to market every period?
Yes, and I will be talking about that in a few slides.
Okay.
But yeah, every company does it differently. Like Tesla, for example, which I'll get into, has it as cash not needed to maintain operating liquidity. But one of the biggest issues is if the price is fluctuating too much and they have to take an impairment on their financial statements, which happened to MicroStrategy a few years ago and kind of crushed them for a while as a company.
Okay. But they're considering it a cash item. Interesting.
Yeah. I'll talk about that a little bit when I get to the accounting complexities.
Then we'll talk about it there. Good.
Cool. All right, so this slide is showing two price charts for Bitcoin. The one on the left is the 1 month price chart, which really outlines the volatility that I was just talking about. Right around February 8th, you can see, or just past February 7th there was a quick spike, and that was right on the announcement of Bitcoin or Tesla's investment. And then from there, it kind of rode momentum up to an all-time high of about $58,000 to $59,000 per coin. And it had a pretty significant sell-off right at that point, about 2 weeks back, 10 days ago, and has kind of traded all over the board, up and down for the last 10 days. And today it's trading right about 48,600. And then the chart on the right, that's a 1 year chart, and that just aims to show how much Bitcoin has grown in valuation and value per coin over the last year.
Is Tesla the big driver of that movement?
Not so much the price over the last year.
Okay.
That has just kind of come about through increased investment and an overall increase in trading volume that we've seen throughout the pandemic, as social distancing and lockdown has kind of forced people away from being in touch with the bank. I think an interest in cryptocurrency and digital transaction has picked up, along with everything else relating to e-commerce and digitization.
Okay.
But Tesla, that significant spike, even on the 1 year chart, right around February, when it dipped down a little bit and then it shot straight up on a very steep slope, that could be related to Tesla and institutional investment. Yeah. So a little bit of rationale behind Tesla's investment in Bitcoin. It does follow Elon's overall interest and promotion of cryptocurrency, which he has been discussing and advocating for the past couple of years. He is one to be attracted to innovative practices and staying on the cutting edge. So it kind of goes hand in hand with just his overall personality and business strategy. Tesla did also announce that they're planning to start accepting Bitcoin as payment for their cars and other products here in the next couple of months. And as Ryan kind of already mentioned, but they disclosed the move as an aim to diversify and maximize returns on cash that they don't need to maintain operating liquidity. And a lot of criticism came down on Tesla for not generating profit. And late in 2019, they really began to see an increase in cash on the balance sheet, and they ended up holding $19 billion in cash at the end of 2020, compared to just $6.3 billion in 2019. So they were looking for other ways to hold that cash that could generate more profit than simply just sitting on the cash itself that doesn't generate any interest. So although it's a little bit riskier, Elon and Tesla ultimately decided that they were generating enough cash where it would be worth the risk to try and maximize return on investment. And the size of their investment being over $1 billion is the largest to date. And they do believe that will continue to fuel an increase in the share price and ultimately drive significant ROI on that investment for Tesla.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding it. So they got an awful lot of cash.
Yes, which is something new for them.
Okay. So, and they just said, we're going to take $1.5 billion and put it in Bitcoin and hope it makes us a lot of money.
Yeah, and they've actually made a lot of money on it too. I'm not sure exactly the pricing, but they've made a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at that that 6-month price chart from when they invested. Honestly, Ryan, can you pop back to that for a second? Because that's actually something I haven't specifically looked at. So yeah, they invested February 8th, and it was worth about $38,000 a coin.
Mm-hmm.
And even after the extreme volatility, it's trading about 49,000 today. So they've made 11,000 per coin, and they put it to scale, 1.5 billion invested. That's a lot of coins.
So now, do you think there's going to be a correlation between the price of Bitcoin and the Tesla stock, that they'll move in some relationship to each other?
I think there will be slight correlation. However, I don't think it will be too significant, because they're kind of just using it as a cash holding.
Okay.
So it's not really being used in their operating liquidity.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think there'll be some correlation just by the sheer volume of their investment, but it shouldn't have too much of a material impact. But, and then the next slide here is just discussing Elon's rebel spirit. In addition to being cutting edge and kind of innovative thinking, Elon does have a pretty significant history of seeking to avoid government regulation, and he's kind of been seen as a rebel and one that has strong will to operate on his own accord. An example of this, in early 2020, he refused to close one of Tesla's manufacturing plants in California as part of a COVID-19 lockdown measure. And there's a tweet that he released that kind of showcases that. This was back in May. He said, "Tesla is restarting production today against Alameda County rules. I will be on the line with everyone else. If anyone is arrested, I ask it only be me." He basically dared the authorities to arrest him and outwardly expressed that he was going to disobey the rules. And surprisingly, they did not punish him at all, did not arrest him, did not arrest anybody else, which really just speaks to his power and his sort of control over the local governments in the areas that Tesla operates. And it's also worth mentioning that this kind of rebel spirit and strong will goes hand in hand with the decision to normalize the adoption of Bitcoin, which can't be circulated or controlled by a central government, as we've discussed, which means that accounts relating to Bitcoin can't be frozen by law enforcement, which gives Elon and Tesla more free reign to operate pretty much as they please. And then
So the only thing they got to worry about is the SEC and the accountants.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's completely off the hook, but it's just more of a decentralized, less regulated current form of currency that they can use, and it just kind of correlates with Elon's individuality, if you will. And then the second picture there just speaks to him being a little bit more of a rebel on Joe Rogan's podcast. Kind of unrelated, just for an extra laugh. But next slide here is talking about why the investment has received so much press. So to date, it is the largest purchase commitment into cryptocurrency by any public company. And also Elon's Twitter personality and his rebellious spirit, as I talked about, have drawn pretty significant media attention for just about every decision that is made regarding Tesla's operations. Hence his insane amount of Twitter followers for just an average CEO. And I truly do believe that consumers and reporters are drawn by Elon's affinity to challenge the status quo. They kind of see him living out an American dream and just being an American bad boy, if you will. And the decision to invest in Bitcoin, especially 1.5 billion worth, represents a huge leap of faith in the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, which has been shrouded in uncertainty and doubt for many years, which is kind of a reason I believe that it hasn't been accepted and adopted in a large scale sense to date. And then picture on the left there, at one time, Elon's Twitter bio just had hashtag Bitcoin, no other context. So he's known for making some kind of rash, impulsive statements and outward expressions of his opinions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on, continuing on the theme of Elon Musk and his Twitter influence, and that is the relationship he has with the SEC. So Elon Musk is no stranger when it comes to the SEC and stuff that he's saying on Twitter. In 2018, Elon Musk tweeted that he was planning on taking Tesla private, which sent investors into a huge panic. He said that the funding was already secured and he would be taking Tesla private at a price of $420. He said shareholders could either sell their shares at that price or they could hold it and join him in taking Tesla private. There was no truth to that, obviously, as Tesla's still a publicly traded company, but it did cause a lot of panic in investors. People were selling their shares. Others were buying shares just based off his tweet. So the SEC did dive pretty deeply into this, and there was never any formal punishment put against Elon, but there was an under-the-table deal signed, and it stated that anything material that Elon tweets must be signed off by Tesla to avoid any possible regulatory penalties from the SEC. And then this brings up the question of, should Elon Musk face SEC regulation for his recent tweets regarding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies? So Elon Musk tweeting about cryptocurrency. He's recently started tweeting a ton of praise and a ton of love for Bitcoin and a bunch of other cryptocurrencies almost every day. And he's also mentioned other cryptocurrencies like Dogecoin on there, which a lot of people know from Wall Street bets and stuff like that. And a lot of people believe that when he made this initial tweet about Dogecoin, there was a massive spike in the price immediately after. So a lot of people are relating that price movement to just one tweet by Elon just saying Dogecoin might be my favorite cryptocurrency. It's pretty cool and pretty crazy, but this led to a massive spike in the price of one cryptocurrency. So many people do believe that Elon, through his massive Twitter following and his influence, has the ability to move the markets with what he says on Twitter. A prime example of this, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, but last May, Elon went on Twitter out of nowhere and tweeted Tesla stock price is too high, in my opinion. As a result, there was a massive sell-off in Tesla stock price. It started tanking. People were like, I don't know, they were just putting more words into what he said, and they were wondering if maybe he was going to take some kind of like drastic measures or like do something to negatively impact Tesla.
Or he knew something that hasn't been disclosed.
Yeah, exactly. So people caused like massive sell-offs for a couple of days. It kind of worked out for Elon because after that big sell-off and dip, Tesla price like absolutely skyrocketed and hasn't stopped since. They even had the stock split. But pretty crazy that him just hopping on Twitter and tweeting 6 words out could cause an absolute market frenzy.
Do you think that drove some of the overall market declines we've seen in the past couple days?
I don't know about like recently, but I think in the past, definitely. I mean, Tesla's a big part of the.
Oh, that's 2020. Now. I thought it was today.
Yeah. No,
yesterday. I misread it.
But,
okay, I thought it was March 1st, I didn't.
No, I mean, I definitely think that like back in May that he probably had some pull on the market. I mean, Tesla's such a big company in the S&P. So, I mean, him tweeting something like that definitely is going to have some impacts. So, yeah, as a result of Elon having so much power and being able to move markets like this, people think that the SEC should be regulating his Twitter and that he should be fined for some of the comments that he's made. And over his recent tweets about cryptocurrency, the consensus among SEC members and other people who follow regulatory law is that Elon will face no punishments for his comments. The reason being is he does have a lot of influence and people do what he says just by their own choice. He's not tweeting out any false information or any material information. He's just tweeting out that he likes cryptocurrencies and certain ones that he likes. So there's nothing illegal against that. It's just him having a big following and people doing what he says.
He has to focus on when he says stuff, whether it's disclosure of information that's not available publicly on Tesla itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if he's just saying like, I love Bitcoin, I mean, there's nothing material there. There's nothing, he's not like urging people to go buy Bitcoin. He's just saying what he's thinking.
Okay.
So there's simple freedom of speech. I mean, he has the right. Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a lot of controversy there. People do get pretty upset that he's able to do this, but it's just kind of free speech and him having a lot of pull. So the next thing I'm covering is how our company is going to classify Bitcoin and just some of the accounting contingencies that are going to be involved in Bitcoin. So Tesla, like we talked about, is going to be classifying its Bitcoin holdings as cash not required to maintain operating liquidity. Tesla did have to change its company-wide accounting policies to allow Bitcoin to be held as cash. So this is new. Now they're able to hold cryptocurrencies as part of their cash holdings. And Bitcoin is also classified as a long-lived intangible asset. So as a result of this, any price drop below the price that you paid for the Bitcoin must be classified as an impairment by the company. One example of this was MicroStrategy is another company that invests a lot into Bitcoin. And there was one quarterly earnings release where they had to take an impairment from their Bitcoin holding, which really weakened their financial statements, and it hurt the company a lot for quite a while. So this is definitely a risk for Tesla and other companies that are going to be holding Bitcoin if they do have to take that impairment on their financials.
So there's a difference, though, between impairment and recording it at fair market value.
Yeah.
Because if they traded it as a short-term investment, they could market to market up and down.
Yeah.
But once you write down a long-term asset, you can't write it back up under GAAP.
Right.
You can under IFRS.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's definitely like confusing, and it's gonna continue to get more confusing, I think, as more people start buying Bitcoin. So just some of the risk for companies that are holding Bitcoin, and how these kind of relate into the accounting issues and risks that are being brought up. One being that Bitcoin has no government regulation. So people are worried that companies may be able to lie about what kind of Bitcoin they hold, and it may be difficult for auditors or other people to track like where all their Bitcoin holdings are necessarily. So that could be one issue of companies maybe lying about how much cash they have on hand if they're able to falsify their Bitcoin holdings.
Well, see, yeah, because auditors, when you audit cash, you confirm it with the bank that's holding it.
Correct.
Did you have to do any of them, Katrina? Bank confirmations?
Yeah, I've worked on cash a little bit, but a lot of other things.
But you got some evidence from the bank
Yeah.
that said, here's what the balance is, and you reconcile it to the ledger.
Yep.
But if this is a private ledger, there's no third party to confirm I hold it?
It is a public ledger, but you can hold it, like Tesla could hold it under multiple accounts. So you would have to get Tesla's account information, track it all back to their Bitcoin. So like, I mean, it's definitely going to be a process, and it's something that auditors have never had to deal with before. So it's definitely a valid concern that people have.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And then another question that was being brought up is people debating if Bitcoin should be listed as cash or as an investment. It's definitely a hotly debated topic because of the volatility of Bitcoin. Some people think it acts more like an investment versus a cash holding. So that's definitely something that companies are going to have to decide on their own in most cases. And then from an investor standpoint, it's going to bring up the question is, will they be viewing Bitcoin as a risk or something that all companies must have? So for example, if you're an investor and you think Bitcoin is just garbage, you think it's worth $0, and you're debating about investing in a company like Tesla, you might look at their Bitcoin holding as a possible risk for the company because you have a negative value on Bitcoin. So that could be an issue for investors going forward and how they view companies. Then on the other end of the spectrum, if you believe Bitcoin's like the way of the future, you might negatively value a company that does not have any Bitcoin holdings. So that kind of just depends on the person, but definitely be something to look out for going forward. And then it also brings up the question of how will companies report revenue when they accept Bitcoin for payments. Elon Musk is talking about accepting Bitcoin as a payment for Tesla cars going forward. So obviously the price of Bitcoin is fluctuating a lot. So if they say that a Tesla is worth 1 Bitcoin at all times, you could be paying like 25,000 for a Tesla or 50,000 for a Tesla. So definitely could lead to some issues as far as revenue reporting goes.
Interesting.
Alrighty, so I'm going to dive a little bit into Bitcoin's acceptance in the banking world, which has pretty much come about in the last few weeks and months recently. On February 11th of this year, the Bank of New York Mellon, which is one of the oldest institutional banks in the United States, announced that it would hold, transfer, and issue Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies later in 2021. And this is pretty significant as they are the first big custody bank to unveil a plan to treat digital currencies pretty much the exact same as other assets. And really why that's significant is although they may not be the first bank to accept Bitcoin, I mean, other banks have dabbled in managing Bitcoin, but treating it the same as other assets, such as cash and other investments, really does point to the future as coming to the mainstream. It's literally just being treated like any other asset. And many banks are just simply reacting to changes in consumer preferences and consumer demand for how they want to hold their assets. So just like any other company, as demand and preferences change, the banks need to adapt their management strategies to meet consumers where they want to hold their assets. And there's a quote there from one of BNY's chief executives. It says, "We have seen a surge in interest and demand from clients, and it is only natural that we bring our legacy of trust and innovation to be a first mover in bridging the gap between traditional and digital assets." So as I discussed, it's just becoming more and more mainstream, especially within the banking industry. And the adoption of BTC by many of the big banks goes hand in hand with the recent aims over the past couple of years to improve and increase the adoption of technology, such as online banking and digital asset management. And to conclude here, a little bit on the future of Bitcoin and our predictions. So we have discussed and seen significant increases in adoption, trust from individuals, corporations, and financial institutions. There are 2 new Bitcoin ETFs as well that were just released and have been trading on the open US markets for about 2-3 weeks now. The first one is the Purpose Bitcoin ETF, BTTC, which I believe is trading about $10-ish right now. And then Evolve Bitcoin ETF, which is trading at about $22 or $23 per share right now. So really the benefit in the ETFs is they provide a more familiar way for investors to expose themselves to Bitcoin without trading the actual BTC stock on the New York Stock Exchange, which is trading at extreme premiums, $48,000. You know, most individuals with normal salaries and normal cash and resources to invest with, they really just can't be trading that on the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. So the ETFs provide a safer way to trade and expose themselves to Bitcoin without those high premiums and the extreme volatility in share price. And it's also worth noting here that the trading of Bitcoin does remain very volatile. So the day-to-day transactional use is still relatively limited. However, putting all the information together and the research that we've done, it's very likely that Bitcoin will be considered truly mainstream in the next 1 to 3 years, most likely.
Does the ETFs actually hold Bitcoin?
I'm not, so there's not too much research on the new ETFs, the BTTC and the EBIT that I just talked about.
Okay.
But I know Grayscale, the Bitcoin Trust, I believe that does directly hold Bitcoin.
Wow.
I believe that the new ETFs do as well. So it's just
interesting.
A lot less risk in still being able to have direct exposure to Bitcoin.
Okay, good job.
Which is kind of, if you think about it, I think you brought up something similar about will the stock price of Tesla be correlated with the stock price of Bitcoin? If you hold stock in their own stock in Tesla or any other company that has significant Bitcoin holdings, you have some indirect exposure into Bitcoin since they have so much invested in Bitcoin themselves.
It'll be interesting. When is Tesla's year end? Sorry, they have a fiscal year end 12/31. I'd be interested to see what the disclosure is going to be, the footnote disclosure on Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting.
Okay, Adele, Brian, Katrina, what do you think of all of this? What did you learn? What do you think of it? Do you think it's going to work?
I have a quick question, kind of.
Sure. Questions, comments?
So I didn't really know that much about Bitcoin. So do you just trade it in one coin or 2 coins? Can you do half coins?
Yes, you can purchase fractional shares. That's the one thing that I would say the majority, over 95% of people that trade Bitcoin are trading fractional shares. I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely don't have 48,600 sitting in my disposable income to trade Bitcoin. So yeah, it's measured in percentage of Bitcoins, but most of the trading is done fractional share wise.
So do you think that if they were to sell Teslas with Bitcoin, would it be one coin, or would it be a price and then you just pay for it in 1.5 coins or something?
I think they would still price in terms of US dollars or whatever currency that the car would be listed for anyway. However, they just will accept payment in whatever amount of Bitcoin, 1.21 Bitcoin or whatever the number comes out to be.
But is it US dollar denominated?
Well, Bitcoin, it can be traded in different currencies. So I think it's based on where they're operating. Is that right, Ryan?
I'm honestly not 100% sure. It might be US dollar denominated. I don't know.
Because that's how we see it, is how much Bitcoin equals a US dollar. I wonder if they have the same thing, like Bitcoin to British pounds, the euro.
I know they have Bitcoin traded in terms of Canadian dollars.
Yeah, it looks like they have it traded in pounds too, so I guess it can be.
Yeah.
This could also be used for currency hedging too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. It's kind of like, it is its own currency, digital.
Interesting. Adele, what do you think?
Yeah.
Questions?
I just thought it was interesting how it could be listed as a cash or an investment. Now that I think about it, I'm not really sure how I would list Bitcoin. But if you guys have any other insight on how you would go about listing it, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just due to the extreme volatility that it should probably be more an investment listing. But I mean, I guess if they keep it in that cash not required for operating liquidity, they can kind of get around that. But I mean, if you're holding $1 billion in cash, you're not going to lose that overnight. But with Bitcoin, you definitely run the risk. I mean, it's unlikely, but it's possible that Bitcoin goes to $0 in the next 24 hours. So that would be $1 billion that you just lost. So I mean, it's definitely risky either way.
That's exactly my take on it. I was just about to say the same thing. If you were holding $100,000 in cash, the next day, it's still going to be worth something. There has not been that level of deflation since Germany and World War II. So I would classify it or lean towards classifying it as an investment, because just if you have a triple leveraged stock, that can drop to nothing overnight, and so could Bitcoin theoretically. So I think for the level of risk and the chances in volatility in the valuation, I think it should be classified as an investment.
Because you can also classify it as marketable securities, short-term marketable securities. So you could do cash, short-term marketable securities, long-term investment, each three of them have different accounting rules.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think for companies that are looking to hold it as an asset, if you will, I don't think they're going to be like technical trading Bitcoin. So I think it would be definitely long term. So I think long term investment or could be marketable security. I guess we'll have to see. There's just not enough companies that hold it in large amounts. There's maybe a handful. So it's going to be interesting when their reporting periods come due, how they classify it. And I think some precedent will be set based on how Tesla treats it and how some of the other companies treat it.
And I'm thinking if it's really a currency, you got to report it as cash.
Mm-hmm.
No different than if I'm a U.S. domiciled company and I have euros on my books, which I report as cash, and I mark them to market if I have an investment in euros, if I have euros that I'm holding in a subsidiary in Germany, when I bring that in to my U.S. parent, I bring it in at market value at the date of consolidation. So there would be, you could apply the same thing.
Yeah. I theoretically 100% you're correct, and it is a currency just like the US dollar or the euro. I think it's just hard to wrap your head around how volatile it is. I mean, literally in a week and a half, it went from trading at $60,000 a coin down to $41,000 a coin. I mean, you're losing 50% of your value in 10 days. It's just like, it's just hard to.
Venezuelan peso may move like that.
Yeah.
Myanmar's whatever.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking of it. I would want it in currency. I wouldn't want it in a long-term investment because I'd have to write it down, but I could never write it up.
Right. But if that's what happened with MicroStrategy, and they got into a pinch with that.
Because if you use the same comparison to euros, if the euro changes from one period to the next, when I bring it back in on my consolidation date, I'm going to use that value, whatever it is. And if it's up or down, I'm going to record it as a translation gain or loss, which is not going to go into the income statement. It's going to go into the other items in retained earnings in the equity. Interesting. Brian, did all this talk about accounting get you like, why are they talking accounting? This is financial statement analysis.
I found the presentation really interesting as well. I actually had never heard of Bitcoin before now, so it was pretty interesting to learn about it. I think the one thing I'll say is I'm a little bit skeptical about how mainstream it can truly become, because I feel like it's confusing, like to like all of us, how it's going to be classified and whatnot. So for like a non-business investing person, like it might be a little more like complex for them to understand. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I don't think it'll be truly, well, I mean, it's all speculation anyway, but I don't think it'll be truly considered for mainstream for the next at least year, likely 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of stigma around Bitcoin too. Like a lot of people have really strong negative opinions against it.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how reactions go once it starts getting pushed more.
What do you think causes the negative reaction? Is it just the volatility, the unknown that you don't understand?
I think it's the uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, also personally, like I get where people are coming from to the point that Bitcoin is just like nothing. Like essentially, you're just telling someone you have this one coin online that you'll never see, and it's worth $50,000. So I mean, I understand like the skepticism in that sense, and like you can't use it right now to buy stuff. So like you're literally just being told by someone that you have this coin worth X amount of money. So a lot of people in that sense just view it as like worthless.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts?
Just like this year has gone, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay. Good job. Thanks.